Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the National Timely Action Hour podcast. This is the show where we talk about everything from Disney to Star Wars and everything in between. My name is Aiden, and I hope that you're doing well. Today we are doing Season 2, Episode 19. This is the top 10 best Disney villains in my personal opinion. Now, like I said, these are just my own personal picks, so feel free to disagree with me and let me know who is your favorite villain. But I've got 10 of the most despicable villains in the history of cinema, and I've got a few honorable mentions that I want to talk about as well. So I'm going to start at number 1 and go all the way to number 10. So my all-time favorite Disney villain is Queen Grimhilda from the 1937 film Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And the reason why I like her so much is because she set the stage and the standard for the Disney villain as we know it, because before Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs was released back in 1937, Walt Disney Studios had mainly done short films, and this was the first full-length animated film. And Disney had to pioneer new filming technology and techniques to make sure that this actually got to the end of production and was released to cinemas across the United States and the rest of the world. And it was a great movie. It's one of my favorite films, period. It's definitely in the top 5. And the villain, the evil queen as she's called, but in the original fairy tale her name is Queen Grimhilda. She is so iconic because she is evil for the sake of being evil. She has no redeeming qualities, and that's perfectly fine. I don't need every single villain to be sympathetic. I just want to see a villain who's evil because they're a son of a bitch, and it makes it all the more satisfying when the hero defeats them. So, for that reason alone, the evil queen is my favorite Disney villain. Now, again, on that same theme of just being evil because they're bad to the bone, enter George Thorogood and the Destroyers guitar riff. At number 2, we have Archbishop Claude Frollo from the 1996 film The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Now, there is a slight difference between the novel that this film is based on and the actual film itself, but The Hunchback is probably my second favorite Disney film, right after Snow White. And one of the main reasons is because Claude Frollo, who in the movie is a judge, but in the novel is the Archbishop of Paris, and he is a very prominent man in both versions, let's just say, and he murders Quasimodo's mother in the movie, but in the book he just finds Quasimodo on the step of the church and adopts him and mistreats him and abuses him. But in the movie it's a bit better, I think, because there's a lot more pathos, because not only does he kill this poor woman, but he adopts her child and raises him and abuses him and neglects him and mistreats him in every horrible way. And he justifies this by saying that he is an aberration, he's an unholy demon, and he takes it upon himself to raise him because one of the priest in the movie says that, if you don't repent and take care of this child, then you are going to be punished by God for this. And Frollo, in that one moment in his entire life, realizes, oh crap, I might be going to hell. And, because I thought that I was a righteous man, I thought that I was doing good. So by realizing this, he's like, oh crap. And so it adds so much more pathos than the original novel. Not that the novel lies not that the original work is bad, it's just that I think that the movie adds so much more depth to the character, which is why he's my second favorite Disney villain. Then at number 3, we have Maleficent from the 1959 film Sleeping Beauty. Again, very evil. In later years, at the time of recording, it's nearing the end of February 2023. So around 10 years ago, they made a movie about Maleficent, trying to paint her as a sympathetic person. But in the original movie, she is pure evil, and the whole point is that she was not invited to Princess Aurora's baptism, and as a result of that, in her petty jealousy, curses the child, and then she actively works to make sure that that follows through. And so she puts her in the spell to fall asleep, and then it takes the love of the Prince Philip to rescue her. And she turns into a dragon, and Philip kills her. So, pretty cool villain, in my personal opinion. Then at number 4, we have a much more reserved villain. This is Lady Tremaine from the 1950 film Cinderella. Now, this is not the first wicked stepmother we saw, because the Queen in Snow White was Snow White's stepmother. But this really cemented the formula of being evil and abusive, but on a more low-key level. Now, Lady Tremaine, she didn't try to have her servant kill Cinderella and tear her heart out and give it to her like the Queen did in Snow White, but she is just as abusive in keeping her locked away and saying that she's a horrible girl and mistreating her in all sorts of manners. And it's the last bit of cruelty when Cinderella works so hard on her dress to go to the ball, and her stepmother tells her biological daughters to tear up the dress and mess up her makeup, and it's just very heart-wrenching. And that's why she's number 4. Then at number 5, we have a much more Shakespearean villain in Scar from the 1994 film The Lion King. Now, I say Shakespearean because The Lion King is just basically Hamlet, but with animals. And so Scar, he is the Claudius of this take on it, and he murders his brother because he wants to be king himself, and he doesn't want to wait until his nephew dies. Well, he's being passed over because his nephew is born, and so he kills his brother, the king, and exiles his nephew because he blames him for his death, even though he's responsible. And he is a tyrannical dictator who mistreats his people, and the land, as a metaphor, starts to dry up and go bad. And so it's only when Simba returns and kills his uncle in ritualistic combat that the land returns to its natural beauty and its natural state, and the people rejoice, or the lions rejoice. And so it's very interesting because he's got such a gravitas, and so he's so charming, but he's so evil, deliciously so. And that's why I like Scar so much. In that same vein, we have at number 6, Hades from the 1997 film Hercules. Now, Hades, again, is jealous of his nephew, and he separates him from Zeus as a way to get back at his brother for banishing him to the underworld, and he sets up all of these trials for Hercules to go through. They resemble the 12 labors of Hercules from the myth, but it's very different as to how Hercules gets in that situation and gets out of it. But regardless, Hades is so charming and so funny, and The actor who plays him does a great job. The actors who play all of these characters do such a good job, and that's in no part due to the writing of the characters. And Hades is just a despicable, pathetic guy, and I just love him. Then at number 7, we have The Horned King from the 1985 film The Black Cauldron. Now, The Black Cauldron is a controversial movie because it was in what is quote-unquote the Disney Dark Age from the early 60s to the late 80s. And that's because after Walt Disney died, there was a lot of trouble financially for the company, and they made some bad decisions. I liked the movies that were made during that period, most of them at least, but the Black Cauldron is especially maligned, and I think that that's very unfair because I saw it as a kid, I loved it, and I saw it as a teenager again, still love it. I've seen clips of it now as an adult. I haven't sat down to watch it again in a long time, but I still have fond memories of it, and I still really enjoy the movie. And the Horned King is one of the most horrifying Disney villains because he wants to use the Black Cauldron to raise an army to take over the world. And he is very menacing looking. He's got a menacing voice, and he is very wicked in his actions. And I think that he is, again, irredeemable, but that's part of the reason why some villains are so entertaining, because it's like, oh my gosh, how are they going to defeat this guy? He's got magic, he's got an army, and then it's just by hard work and dumb luck that they do, and it is very entertaining. Then at number 8, it's a more dramatic villain, I would have to say, and this is, again, very underrated film, but Amos Slade from The Fox and the Hound, which was released back in 1981. Now, The Fox and the Hound is this beautiful and haunting story about the power of friendship and nature versus nurture, man versus nature, man versus beast, and all of those primal storytelling elements that have been around for millennia in our storytelling cultures. And Amos Slade is the hunter who with his hound dogs the fox, pun intended. But Amos is very interesting because so when it starts out, he seems bigoted against foxes because, you know, he's just this mean old grumpy farmer who doesn't like foxes. But then when you think about it, he has a chicken coop, and foxes kill chickens. So this man is trying to get by raising chickens, and here comes this fox who wants to steal his chickens and kill them and eat them, and he's been raising them to, you know, get their eggs and sell them, and then eventually he would kill them and eat them himself, but that's his property. And so, but then, because he and his dogs are hunting the fox, one of his dogs gets seriously injured. Now, in the novel that this is based on, the dog actually dies, but you can't have that in a Disney movie. So they changed it so that the dog breaks his leg, and so he wants to get revenge on the fox for causing his dog to be injured, killed in the book. But eventually it comes down to the pup who grows to be an actual grown dog, who was friends with the fox as a child. It comes down to that brother versus brother sort of conflict, and Amos is just the arbiter of that for the human emotional side. And he is such an underrated villain in such an underrated film, and I absolutely adore the picture. I love it so much, and I wish that people would stop giving it such a hard time and appreciate it for the art that it is. But Amos is only number 8 because the others, I think, are just a bit more entertaining. Because if you want a more grounded villain than Amos Is Your Man. Now, I struggled with these last two because I loved them and I loved their films, but, I didn't want to go and list every single Disney villain because we'd be here forever, because I think that most of them are great. So at number 9, we have Captain Hook from the 1953 film Peter Pan. Now, I love Peter Pan. I love Captain Hook. I think that he is such a great villain, but the others I just think are a bit better. So Captain Hook in the movie is a lot like his counterpart in the book that it's based on. Now, Captain Hook, he was a pirate, so he's pillaging and stealing treasure, and Peter Pan interrupts that and cuts off his hand and feeds it to a crocodile. So Captain Hook is obviously upset about that and wants revenge on Pan for mutilating him. And so now he and his crew and his first mate, Mr. Smee, are hunting him and the Lost Boys. And they kidnap the native girl Tiger Lily to draw them out. And then they offer Jane and her brothers a spot on their ship, and they have a great song as a pitch, but Jane's like, nah, and she takes her brothers and gets the heck out of there. But Captain Hook, again, charming, entertaining, and he's very menacing because he is an actual threat, because he came very close to killing them, and he actually shoots one of his men for annoying him, so you can see that he is a legitimate threat. So that's why I think that Captain Hook is such a good villain. And finally, at number 10, we have Gaston from Beauty and the Beast from 1991. And again, Gaston is a more grounded villain because he's a hunter and he's vain and he wants to marry Belle because she is beautiful and intelligent, and the only reason why, those are the ways he tries to legitimize it, but the real reason is because he sees her as a trophy, because yes, this is during the 16 or 1700s, and women weren't treated as they were in our modern society, but even then, men treated women with respect. Gaston does not. Gaston is an egocentric bastard who sees Belle as a trophy, and that's why he's such a bad guy, because he is a real person. Now, again, by the end of the film, we need him to be a legitimate threat, so he tries to kill the Beast, and he comes close, but then the Beast kills him, and then he turns back into a human, and he and Belle live happily ever after. But Gaston is very interesting because of that real-world aspect of him. Now, for the honorable mentions, some of my other favorite Disney-owned villains are Darth Vader, Emperor Palpatine, Boba Fett, and Darth Maul. Now, since Disney bought Lucasfilm, now they own Star Wars and Indiana Jones and all of those characters, so when talking about great cinematic villains, you can't go a list without mentioning Darth Vader and the Sith Lords and some of the bounty hunters in Star Wars. So I wanted to focus more on Disney proper in this episode, but those are some great Disney-owned villains. And that is all I have for you today. Once again, my name is Aiden, and you are listening to the National Timely Action Hour podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I sincerely hope that you have a wonderful day. We'll see you in the next episode. Bye.